My name is Sarah Conklin. I'm a Fox Valley resident, and I'm here today to give my full-fledged and enthusiastic support for Kamala Harris as the next President of the United States. I'm one of the more than 266,000 Wisconsinites who relied on the Affordable Care Act to survive. I know what a world without the Affordable Care Act looks like because I lived it. Before the Affordable Care Act, I felt trapped in a marriage that was toxic and unhealthy. I couldn't leave it because of my pre-existing conditions. I wouldn't be able to get insurance on my own, and my doctors advised me not to get a job at that point. The Affordable Care Act gave me the freedom to leave that relationship without being burdened by whether I'd be able to afford the critical health care I need to survive and have a quality of life. Vice President Harris has worked alongside President Biden to fight for the ACA. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has repeatedly promised to rip away the health care that so many Wisconsinites with stories like mine rely on, including those with pre-existing conditions. Vice President Harris helped pass historic legislation that slashed my prescription drug prices with the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm now on Medicare, and this year, with it being dropped to a $3,250 cap, I capped out at the end of February. Next year, when it drops to $2,000, I'm going to cap out in January, and that at current prices will save me approximately $6,800 a year, which, I'm sorry, that's substantial to anybody. That's a lot of money. I'm speaking to you all here today because we can't afford another Trump presidency. When I read his Project 2025 agenda, I was terrified for not only my own future, but also for the future of our state. Donald Trump and his MAGA allies have made it abundantly clear what they would do with any 4 years in the White House. They would take away health care for people like me, attack democracy, and rip away our reproductive freedoms. This election is a choice between past and the future. It is a choice between a dark vision for our country and one that is hopeful. Vice President Harris is fighting for a future that strengthens our democracy, protects reproductive freedom, and ensures that no one has to choose between putting food on the table and health care they need to survive. I'm so proud to be supporting her, and I will be doing everything I can between now and November 5th to make sure she is our next president. I thank you for listening to me, and with that, I'm going to turn this over and introduce Christy Welch, who's chair of the Brown County Democrats.
Good job.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for everyone joining us today and coming out to hear more about the choice facing us all this November. As Sarah said, my name is Christy Welch. I am chair of the Democratic Party of Brown County. I'm also running for state assembly in the 88th district, and I am a delegate to the DNC. I first got involved in politics when Roe v. Wade was overturned, because I was shocked to see this right that I had lived with my whole life taken away, and what it meant for what was potentially to come. Here in Wisconsin, we believe in giving women the right to make decisions about their own bodies. And that's why we're here today. Because there is only one candidate who will support our rights and freedoms, and that's Vice President Kamala Harris. Vice President Harris has spent her life fighting for women. From her time as a courtroom prosecutor taking on sexual assault cases, to defending reproductive health care providers from violence as Attorney General, to fighting for reproductive rights and Black maternal health as a U.S. Senator. As Vice President, Kamala Harris has led the administration's response to Trump's overturning of Roe v. Wade, supporting President Biden's 3 executive orders to protect reproductive health care access, and traveling the country to galvanize leaders in the fight for reproductive freedom. Earlier this year, as part of her Fight for Our Freedoms tour, she became the first vice president to visit a reproductive health care clinic that provides abortion care. In her words, "This is not just an attack on women's fundamental freedoms. It is an attack on the very foundation of our public health system." Today, Vice President Harris is fighting to pass federal legislation to restore reproductive freedom and protect reproductive health access in all 50 states. Her opponents, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, are offering a much more extreme vision. Donald Trump continues to brag about overturning Roe v. Wade and calls the cruel abortion bans he's unleashed a beautiful thing to watch. Trump promised to be leading the charge in banning abortion nationwide and said that women who have an abortion should face punishment. His choice of J.D. Vance as his running mate tells you everything you need to know about Trump's anti-abortion agenda. Vance opposes exceptions for rape and incest and said he would like to see abortion illegal nationwide. He even suggested that women should stay in violent marriages. Trump and Vance have a dangerous plan to use every arm of the federal government to enact this agenda and attack reproductive freedom. I hope you've heard of Project 2025, and if you haven't, you should Google it. It's all right there on the internet for anyone to see. It is an extreme blueprint for a second Trump term written by those closest to him. Project 25 contains detailed plans on how a Trump-Vance administration would ban abortion in all 50 states without Congress. It even includes plans to restrict access to birth control and prosecute doctors for sending or receiving medication for abortion in the mail, something that Vance has demanded the DOJ do. This scares me, and it should scare you. Here in Wisconsin, we know the stakes because we are on the front lines of this fight. After Trump's Supreme Court appointees overturned Roe v. Wade, an extreme abortion ban from 1849 was revived in our state. For over a year, women were denied care, clinics shut down, and doctors feared retaliation. If we let Donald Trump and J.D. Vance win this election, they will implement their Project 2025 agenda and turn the entire country into the dystopia that we saw here in Wisconsin. But there's another option. Her name is Kamala Harris, and she is a champion for reproductive freedom. We will not be silent while Trump and his VP pick continue to attack women. We will not stand by while white male politicians try to control women's bodies and choices. We will stand up and cast our vote for Vice President Kamala Harris this November and show the world that when women fight, we win. And with that, I would like to introduce my friend Ahmad Rivera-Wagner.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out on this very beautiful day for Green Bay. Great views behind us. My name is Ahmad Rivera-Wagner. I am a DNC delegate as well as an assembly candidate for the 90th District right here in Green Bay. As you all know, I'm here to enthusiastically support VP Harris. We saw just in Milwaukee with over 3,000 people what a force of nature she is. We saw the enthusiasm is palpable, but it's not only palpable, it is actionable. People are signing up in droves, we're raising money in the millions, we are having volunteers from all over the state wanting to plug into this campaign because it truly matters how exciting the moment we are in. That it matters that there is a real choice before us between VP Harris and former President Donald Trump. She has been an incredible partner to President Biden, and I can speak to that deeply here in Green Bay. From ARPA funds that have gone to expand child care and improve climate change mitigation efforts, to infrastructures that have helped, infrastructure investments that have made our bridges stronger, and our roads better. But more so, even showing up here, things like apprenticeship programs, where we are making sure that the generation of today are in the jobs of tomorrow. And so we know that with President Biden and VP Harris, that investment in Green Bay is because they deeply care about this community, and we think that's incredibly important. She's been, as you all probably know this deeply, she's had a distinguished career in public service. She served as a district attorney, an attorney general, a United States senator, and as a vice president. Frankly, this makes her the best person in the race to prosecute the case against Donald Trump. In particular, Ms. Harris has specialized in cases involving sexual abuse, as we all have learned that Donald Trump has been found liable for committing sexual abuse. As Attorney General of California, she took on the country's largest for-profit colleges and put them out of business. We know that Donald Trump has ran a for-profit college and was forced to pay $25 million in students that it scammed. During the foreclosure crisis, Kamala Harris took on big Wall Street banks and won $20 billion for working families, holding those banks accountable for fraud. Donald Trump was just found guilty of 34 counts of fraud. Nothing can be more important than beating Donald Trump and J.D. Vance on their extreme Project 25 agenda this November. They've laid out the roadmap of what they believe they want for their next term. And so have we. We want an administration that cares about Green Bay, that cares about women, that cares about housing, that cares about childcare and climate, that cares about the LGBTQ community, and regardless of how you vote or when you vote, that you are going to get represented and supported by this administration. And that's something that the Biden-Harris administration has done here in Green Bay. President Harris, ahead of the game, Vice President Harris, believes in the sacred freedom to vote. Over the last 4 years, we've watched as the Biden-Harris administration has invested in Green Bay. The last 4 years, we've watched Trump and MAGA extremists actually create election lies that led to death threats to not only me and my family, but to poll workers and others. We've actually watched over 4 years where we had to watch people followed. Disagreement shouldn't be dangerous. So for me, the choice between the two candidates is clear. Do we want someone who wants to believe in the cornerstone of our community, which is democracy, or someone who's willing to only like this country when they win elections? I believe that we should get someone who deserves to support democracy, and that is VP Harris. Let me be very clear. Kamala Harris represents the next generation of the Democratic Party. She is the best qualified and best prepared person to take on Donald Trump in November and win. I know that with the kind of enthusiasm that we're seeing across the state, across the country, the ones that we're seeing from my fellow delegates and residents here in Green Bay, the kind of historic investments that have been made in this city, I know that Green Bay is going to stand with and by the candidate who's going to deliver for us, and that is VP Kamala Harris. I'll take any questions.
I will be getting new poll numbers later today, but polls currently they seem still really tight. Americans still seem very split on who they'll vote for in November. Why should folks vote for Harris?
A great question. So I can only tell you from the Wisconsin perspective, which we are a purple state, and Green Bay is in the most purple district, the most purple city, and the most purple district, and the most purple state. So us, a tie race is what we deal with every election cycle. We vote every year. There's always an important race, whether it's Supreme Court, governor, or city council, or mayor. We always know that they're close. But what we have seen over the last few elections, particularly the last 4 years, that good candidates that believe in strong values of democracy, women's rights, and addressing climate change, investing in childcare, fixing our darn roads, as many of us know. Those are the candidates that win, and when those races look tight in the polls, they actually win big in November. And so I foresee the same type of energy and effort happening for VP Harris. That by doing the work, by talking to the voters, by delivering for people, that is going to result in a win for November. But I would love for any of my colleagues to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that, while Kamala held obviously a very high position, when you're VP, you're kind of in the background. So I think people need some time to get to know her. And once they do, they're going to realize that she is super accomplished, capable. She's going to be, able to hit the ground running, and that she's the best choice. So it's going to take a little time for some people.
My other question would be too that in the previous weeks, obviously some talk of Project 2025 have continued to kind of rise. Google is popping up more too. Donald Trump is starting to kind of distance himself from that Project 2025. Do you believe it still has validity, and that this would be something that would happen if he were to be elected president?
You want to go first? You want to go? Okay. I think this is a really important indicator that this was the blueprint decided and designed by at least 140 people in the Trump administration, at least 6 of which were either former deputies or secretaries themselves. This was the blueprint that they imagined for a second term in the Trump administration. What we learned both from the 4 years he was president and the 4 years after and this plan for the next 4 years is that most Americans do not like extremist policies that turn back the time on rights, privileges, and our future. And so what we're seeing over and over again is when we tell people the truth, when we put daylight on the actual facts on the ground, there is unfortunately an extremist agenda. This is a unique and interesting version of the Republican Party. You know, Green Bay is a beautiful community, not because we care who you vote for, but we care if you're a good neighbor. We care if you're a good community member, if you turn to your friend and colleague and take care of them. That is a deep Green Bay value. The idea that this Republican Party has turned to extremism, that we somehow should limit women's bodies, that we should make it, we only take care of the people that we like or who vote for us, or that democracy is only good when we win, those are just not Green Bay values. And I think that they're running away from their blueprint because when people see it, they know it's not good. And I think that is why we're going to win in November, not because it's about right and left, not because it's about good and evil, but because it's about being a good neighbor, friend, colleague, and community member versus someone who's only incredibly selfish and only interested in supporting or helping people who help them. That is not very Green Bay, and that's why I'm enthusiastically supporting VP Harris.
You mentioned fundraising. I think it was in like less than 24 hours,
Yeah.
$81 million was fundraised once Kamala got the amount of delegates she needed. Do you believe that fundraising has kind of turned the page for you guys, but also do you believe the polls will, I believe the Emerson College poll will come out later today.
Yeah.
Do you think that will show in the numbers?
You know, I wish I could tell you I was an expert in polling. What I can tell you is that measuring voter sentiment is obviously very complicated and challenging. Here's what I do know. There are proof points that we have in elections, and one of them is volunteer shifts. One of them is fundraising, and one of them is the kind of campaign activities that you have on the ground. What we've seen over the last 72 hours is that over $100 million have been raised. That is one indicator. The greatest Democratic record in campaign history. We've seen over 100,000 people sign up to volunteer. Again, breaking records. And we just had VP Harris kick off her presidential, essentially campaign in Milwaukee, so big that they had chain venues, ended up at 3,000 people. So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what the Emerson polls are going to say. What I can tell you is that there's tried and true measurements that we look at to see, is there enthusiasm, is there energy, and is the work being done? And in all 3 of those measurements, we have some examples of us having an historic campaign that could lead to a victory in November. And I do think that enthusiasm will show up. Whether it shows up in this poll or the next one or the week after, I don't know. But what I am excited is that there's another call for folks who are out for Biden-Harris happening tonight. The night before, there was 100,000 people who joined a call to get involved. The night before that, there was 100,000 people. This type of energy, some are claiming they haven't seen since President Barack Obama launched his campaign in 2008. This is because people deeply care about the future of this country, and they're ready to get involved to win in November.
Final question for me. Kamala on Tuesday said that the road to the White House is through Wisconsin.
That's right.
Can you just talk a little bit more about why Wisconsin voters are so important in any election?
So I said this a bit earlier. So Wisconsin is not only, it's the most purple state with the most purple counties, and some cities are the most purple districts in the entire country. So for us, every race is close. And so what matters to Wisconsin voters and Green Bay voters are the issues. It's not just simple enough to be a good D or a good R. It's about the issues that people are going to put forward for them. And that's one of the reasons why we are so important, is that good people can win whether you are a D or an R. Good policies can win whether you are a D or an R. And with our ungerrymandered maps, we're seeing more and more of that happening. And so Wisconsin is the cornerstone of what's possible. There was a time where Wisconsin was called the Wisconsin idea, where we could talk about us being the incubator of democracy and great policies, from climate change to Social Security to LGBTQ rights. This is both a historic place and a place you have to win the presidency. And we helped make that decision in 2020, where we got Joe Biden Biden over the finish line with 20,000 votes, 5,000 of which single-handedly came from Green Bay, Wisconsin, of the many votes that turned out. So Wisconsin has a special place, both in policy and practice, but in particular because it is about the policies that help people win, not just about the party they belong to. And Democrats have been working incredibly hard to win voters by actually doing the right things for working families, and I think that's going to result in a win in November.
Can you guys talk about just both of you guys going to Chicago and being delegates, and just what do you kind of expect when you're down there with everything that's been happening the last week?
Well, it's my first convention. I think it's yours.
Kind of, sort of.
As well. Okay, so I mean, we'll be in the convention hall. Obviously, I'm sure there's going to be lots of speeches. It's going to be, I'm sure the energy is going to be just through the roof, and people are going to be excited and just, you know, communing together and being excited about what's happening. But you know, honestly, I don't know. You could speak to more about what actually happens, right? There's you know, get-togethers every night, which are going to be more festive now, I think.
Yeah, and what do you like looking forward to? I mean, is there certain speeches or anything that they're going to highlight, or I mean, just with everything that's going on last week? Just unity, or?
You know, I don't know that we even have the schedule yet, and even if we did, it probably would change now. So, I mean, the big one will be when Kamala speaks, right? That'll be every single person that is, you know, a delegate will be in that room. Every guest that they can cram in will be present for that. You know, it'll be interesting to see the timing of when we know who the VP is.
That would also,
you know, maybe that'll be revealed at the convention. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, there's going to be lots of big name speakers, and it's going to be fun.
And just so you know, for me, you know, this is an incredible moment, right? That all of a sudden DNC delegates have now, and the first time in modern history, are going to get to decide who the presidential nominee is in this particular way. And so someone like me who grew up, who was raised by a single mom at 16, we experienced homelessness, never thought that I would be important enough or cool enough to be at something like the DNC, helping to make history with an incredibly historic candidate. And so to me, this is one of the most exciting times of my life. I was a delegate in 2020, which was incredibly virtual. So imagine just having a week-long Zoom, which could be exciting, and there's good things around that. So this will be my first in-person time, and what a time to be a Democrat. What a time to be alive, to be fighting for both the soul of our nation, the democracy that we deserve. So I am so pumped. I'm also excited to hear from Biden and see what that looks like. I think the conversation they had last night was incredible. I think I'm looking forward to VP Harris. We have an incredible bench of stars, from Secretary Buttigieg to Gretchen Whitmer. The Midwest is kind of rocking the boat this year. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone, having a good time. And no event would be good if the Green Bay people didn't have a good beer or drink or some alcohol. So I imagine there might be some imbibing and some good times. So I couldn't be any more excited to be there. It feels like a miracle that someone like me, coming from where I've come from, gets to be a part of this history making. So really excited to do that.
Really quick, just with the, again, the switch up with everything now, again, Democrats behind Kamala Harris. How excited are you to find out who the VP is?
Do you wanna say something about the VP?
I am ecstatic
to
find out who it is. I have my own preference. I think we all do, to some degree. It will be interesting to see who is chosen and for what reason. I have some personal feeling only with which swing state can we actually wrap up with this nomination. So it will be an exciting and interesting conversation to have.
Do you want to say anything about VPs? Okay. I'm just ecstatic that, like, with such a deep bench in the Democratic Party, we could have anyone from a swing state. We could have an all-woman ticket. We could have our first LGBTQ person on the ticket. We could have folks who are young at heart. We could have some seasoned, experienced folks. It really is kind of, you know, for a place that's hosting the draft, it kind of feels like the draft for Democratic politics. And so if I'm excited about the draft of 2025, I couldn't be more excited about essentially the VP stakes, as I like to call them, because it's, democracy's on the line. So I do think it's really important. So enthusiasm is so much so that, I don't always get the words out right.
Thanks, Sean, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. That was really nice.